G'day, I'm Pete, I'm the Aussie Bush Cop. In 2012 I retired from the New South Wales Police for mental health reasons, and then I took up a drastic decision to move to King Island, where I become a homesteader, and I get to live this beautiful life, and I'd like to share with you some of my stories. The prisoner was very well presented. He was a good looking young man, he was well spoken, but certainly the latter part was all a ruse, because he wasn't a nice person and he was convicted of the murder. G'day everybody, thanks so much for joining me again. The stories I have for you today are about funny things that happen in court. Now, before you join the coppers, most people have never been to court. Why would you? But there's certain protocols that happened, and sometimes those things can trip people up. And the first story this morning is about a murder trial that I had to guard a prisoner for. Now, it's one of those quirks of our criminal justice system that when a person is a juvenile and commits a crime but is arrested and tried as an adult, there is a period of time, and I don't know how long it is, but where they are still in some sense treated as a juvenile. And in this story, which was a murder trial, one of those quirks manifests itself by the prisoner being in police custody as opposed to corrective services custody. So each day over this the period of this murder trial, the prisoner was brought in from a juvenile detention centre, taken to the police station, and then the police officer was tasked with the duty of taking him over to the court for the day and sitting in the court, effectively guarding him. So that's the background. And one day I had this job, and the prisoner was very well presented. He was a good-looking young man. He was well spoken, but certainly the latter part was all a ruse, because he wasn't a nice person and he was convicted of the murder. So I went over to, murder trials are held in what's called a Supreme Court. Now, Supreme Court is just what it's deemed to be for that day. It can be a Supreme Court that's got nothing to do with the physical location. It's whatever it is deemed to be for that period of time. The Supreme Court, pushing the logic, could be held in a telephone box. But a Supreme Court judge, whether it's male or female, wears what I would say is ostentatious type clothing. It is flowing gowns and wig, and the Supreme Court judge has next to him someone that I just referred to as his boy, was sitting next to him and just behind him, and he wears a morning suit. I think that's what it's called. It had a long suit with tails on it. And his job, well, I'm sure there was more than just this, but if the judge wanted something from his chambers, for example, he just told the boy, and the boy went and got it. So that's the setting. Supreme Court judge, he looks like Santa Claus at David Jones at Christmas time. Flowing gowns, wig, the whole lot. Quite impressive. And the day that I was there, something quite controversial, or maybe that's the wrong word, but something unusual happened, and that the prisoner went into the witness box and was being cross-examined about prior assaults that he'd committed on this female that he murdered. Now that's controversial because it's, I think it's called tendency evidence, and it has to be argued by the prosecutor to be allowed because it's prejudicial. Largely it seemed to be prejudicial against the accused. But anyway, the prisoner is in the witness box being cross-examined, and he's actually been asked these questions by his own defence counsel. And the question is, he hit the girl with a stick, and he's asked, how big was the stick? And he said, and bearing in mind this young man was certainly from the metric age, and he said about 3 feet. Now, a judge can ask whatever questions he likes if he thinks that the jury might need some clarification or simply clarification in his own mind. And he said to the prisoner, "Can you indicate to the jury what you consider to be 3 feet?" And he gave a fair reckoning of 3 feet. He went like this. And then the next question was, how thick was the stick? And at that point, the prisoner forgot himself. He forgot all the schooling that his defence team had given him about how to present in court and how to speak in court. I'm not going to repeat what he actually said because there's enough ugliness in the world without me adding to it. But he used to estimate 3 or 4 inches, he used a very crude expression. And as soon as he said that, I looked over at the jury and I could see a wave of guilty conclusions going through the jury's mind because he just forgot himself. Anyway, at the end of that day, when I took the prisoner back over to the cells in the police station prior to going back to the detention centre, I said to him, "Mate, how do you think it's going over there?" And in his gutter rat way of speaking, he said, "I think I've got this beat, I'm going to win." And I encouraged him. I said, "Yeah, mate, I think you got this beat. You're going to get off this." And of course he didn't, and he was found guilty of murder. Another one is that when one night I was working and we got into a pursuit with a vehicle. It wasn't stolen, I don't believe. We got into a pursuit with this vehicle. It was if you live in Australia, you'll be familiar with Valiant motor cars made by Chrysler. And they're big old cars. In fact, I used to own one. I've owned a 72 model Valiant. They're a big lumbering sort of a car. They're like a 100-mile-an-hour lounge room. Anyway, we were pursuing this car for mile after mile, and eventually I was out on this lonely country road, sealed road, and eventually it just, you might say, blew up. You know, the overheated and steam coming out of it, and it just stopped, and we arrested the offender, and I don't know what he was charged with, I can't remember, but just coincidentally, I was in court the day that he went to, he pled guilty to it, I believe, whatever he was charged with, and I just was in court, and I saw him walk past me, and he was quite well presented in court, like had nice clothes on, but when he walked out, he was quite a tall man. And when he walked out, I looked down at his shoes, and the back of his shoes were cut out because he couldn't fit his foot into the shoes that he borrowed. And about that much of his foot was hanging out the back of the shoe, and that was just quite funny. I'm sure the magistrate probably would have noticed it too. Another day in local court, when I was just sitting there waiting I must have had a hearing that day, and there was a whole lot of people coming into court and pleading guilty to different offences, you know, mostly minor offences. And the magistrate in this court was a former police prosecutor, which also means he was a former police officer. And the magistrate was become quite frustrated with people coming into his court and not addressing him correctly. When I first started in the police, you always called a magistrate your worship. It was then changed to your honour. Anyway, one time a person came in, he was really lackadaisical about his appearance, about the way that he spoke, and the magistrate said in very firm tones, "When you come into this court, you will address the person on this bench, whether it's male or female, as your honour," and lay down the law. And so the person went out, and sure enough, everyone else that came in after that was on their best behaviour. We had another magistrate who, if you've seen the American TV show Judge Judy, and who had a reputation for being pretty tough. Well, in this particular circuit, in this particular town, we had a magistrate, and she quickly earned the nickname of Judge Judy because she was pretty tough. And one day I had a hearing. It was just a simple matter and an offence under the Summary Offences Act. And the fellow had a pretty bad record, quite a long record. And when she found him guilty, magistrates very rarely look at you directly as police like me. But when Judge Judy found this person guilty and then sentenced him, because it was a summary offence, could only be a monetary fine, she looked at me and nodded her head like that, as if to say, that'll teach him, senior, for being rude to you. The next story happened in a tiny little place, and in this little village there was a pub, and Friday night was the big night at the pub. Yeah, we might get about 100 people there on a Friday night, and there was generally meat raffles, and this particular evening we played a joke on somebody. The bloke that we played the joke on had been before the court on a drink driving matter. And he was quite a mature age when this happened, but when he went to court and pled guilty to it, the magistrate in that particular circuit was quite well known for being tough on drink driving matters, and routinely said to the person appearing before him, when you come back for sentence, bring your toothbrush with you, meaning you're going to go to prison. I knew that this person wasn't going to prison. He had a bad record, but it was a long, long time earlier, long time. And how I knew he wasn't going to prison was that the probation and parole officer came to my station to speak with me about an appropriate, or my opinion about what should happen. And I said to this officer, listen mate, I can tell you, this bloke is absolutely poop scared he's going to go to prison. He doesn't need to go to prison. He's never going to reoffend. He doesn't need that. So what happened was, on the Friday night at the hotel, he went to court on the Friday, found out he wasn't going to prison. And on the Friday night at the hotel, we organised for him to win a lucky door prize. Now, he knew something was up straight away, because there was never ever a lucky door prize. And he knew something was up, and then he was handed this package. I think the publican might have went and bought this stuff and put it in a nice package, and he undid it. Inside the package was soap on a rope and a toothbrush. And he had a wry laugh about it. And I said, you muck up again, mate, you're going to need it. So anyway, we had a bit of a joke, and that was okay. The final story for today is when I was doing my initial training at the academy, we had to, at the academy there was a thing called a mock court, M-O-C-K, mock court, where you learnt sort of how to give evidence. And they used to also use the same scenario for officers that were already in the police and were training to become prosecutors. And on this, so they used to use the same thing for two purposes. One, we went into the witness box giving evidence, and so the ones that were going to become prosecutors, they were playing the role of a defence counsel. And so the matter that I had to present to the court was a marijuana matter, someone caught with marijuana, and I was being cross-examined about this exhibit. And I just referred to it as cannabis sativa, because there's more than one sort of cannabis. There's cannabis you can make rope out of and clothing, but the cannabis sativa is the illegal one, the ones that can make you intoxicated. And the police officer that was learning to become a prosecutor said, in very flowery language, pretending to be defence counsel, said, "Oh, and I suppose you know all about cannabis sativa, do you, constable?" And I said, "Yes, before the police I was a noxious plants inspector, so I'm very familiar with, and strangely enough, cannabis sativa is a noxious plant as well." And that floored her, and she quickly said, "No more questions for this witness," and I was excused from the witness box. Immediately after that, we had our lunch break, and I was walking along the hallway, and there was lots of police and student police walking along, and she came up to me quite quickly and she said, "Were you joking in there about being a noxious plants inspector?" I said, "No, so it wasn't. Before the coppers, that's what I used to do." So anyway, that was a lot of fun. And so thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.